Hello everyone, welcome to the Sweeney Show, Business and Law Podcast. My name is David Sweeney and joining me here today is Richard Grogan, solicitor. Richard, you're very welcome.
Thanks, David. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm glad you gave me a big agenda to talk about before we started, because I haven't got a clue what we're going to talk about. But we can talk about life and love and football and law and
the meaning of it all.
From the whole gambit, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, because I know we tried to do this before Christmas, and I had a little COVID scare at home, my family, so I had to call it off last minute, and I know you're very busy. How have you been finding the last 12 months, both personally and professionally?
Well, personally, I found it great because I've been able to stay in the office and basically cocoon in the office because of the amount of employment stuff that's coming up. So I'm not seeing anybody. I miss. I'm seeing people on Zoom and Team, but I'm gonna shake hands with a client for a year.
Yeah.
And I actually find that very strange, that the personal contact isn't there. I had the thing last week, a person came to the office to collect a check. Now, they were standing outside because of the COVID. And it was the first time I'd ever seen them.
Yeah.
I actually had never dealt with them by way of even a Zoom meeting, because they didn't have... They were that bit older.
Yeah.
They didn't have that. It was all done over the phone. So it was kind of strange when you're looking at the back of the file for your AML documents. Yeah. Does this person look anything like the photograph that I got in? So that's kind of strange that you've gone through a whole year.
Yeah. And even I think when you do meet people, I think the mask is just a big intrusion, isn't it? To interact with someone properly, to face and have a proper communication with them.
Well, I mean, I'm an employment law solicitor, so a lot of the time you're looking at body language, and the body language element has gone, because now all you're seeing is their eyes. Yeah. So now we've got a whole new thing. We have to be able to identify from their eyes what they're doing. So the body language element has gone completely, and that's kind of a bit strange. And it is strange meeting people. Even when you're walking down, when I would go out for a walk at lunchtime, and you walk into a shop and somebody says hello to you and you go, who are they? Yeah. So it's a bit strange on that. But that's, we're all solicitors' offices. I mean, we're an essential service. Yeah. We've kept going, but it's very strange, it's very unusual, and I think it's stressing everybody out.
Yeah, a small bit, yeah. And your practice day today, were you kind of... IT efficient, or were you able to do the remote calls up to that, or did you find there was a big shift in the last 12 months?
If I put it this way, we had done the odd Zoom meeting, and we had Microsoft Team on the system, so it was there. Before COVID, we're doing a Zoom, we nearly kind of sent a note around the office, people nearly come in to look at it, like we're doing Zoom. So that's been a huge change. I think also the amount of posts that we open up has just gone through the floor. Now it's all emails, and that creates its own stress, because you're now getting an email at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 9:30 you're getting a reminder, and that's a difficulty that people don't take account of. When you're asking for legal advice. I was trained by a man who, they used to say in the office that the word mañana didn't denote that degree of urgency on anything that he did. And his whole approach to life was, we'll think about that for 24 hours. Yeah. Then we'll put something together, and then we'll sleep on that, and we'll send it out the following day. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I don't think he was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's an awful lot of, stuff that we get in now, which is, can you come back to me on this? And there's times that you have to pick up the phone and say, look, I actually want to think about this. I want to think about the reply. Yeah. And so what we've done is that when we're giving advice, it's fine if somebody says, can we have a chat about this, or can we set up a meeting, or, can you have a look at this? We'll come back and say, yeah, we will. But if we're giving advice, we're now doing it by way of a letter.
Yeah.
So we dictate the letter, and the letter may go out by an attachment.
Yeah.
You know, nobody may get.
Yeah.
You know, but that time that you do the letter, you get it typed up, and you can look at it and think about it before you send it.
Yeah.
And that's important. Now, there is a time lag, but if I put it this way, it's much easier to spend, to take a day to give the right advice.
Yeah.
To get the wrong advice out in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it's that when you get something in and they're looking for the advice, you kind of go, hold on a moment. Maybe when you think about it, you go, maybe there's a few questions I might want to ask.
Yeah.
I wonder have they covered and you go back and then you suddenly find it's a different thing. A colleague said to me recently, and I thought it was good. He said, you can have quick, cheap, or good. Yeah. But pick two. So good and quick won't be cheap. Cheap and quick won't be good. He said, and we don't do that either.
Yeah.
And good and cheap won't be quick.
Yeah.
So you can pick two, and I think that may be the best way. But really, actually, it's pick. There's only two that you can have, and the third one, if somebody wants quick and cheap, the answer on it is no. Yeah. This is not the right place to do it, because we do employment law, and we've 800 pieces of legislation. Yeah. None of it is codified. Yeah. None. We've got 3 different definitions of employee and 2 different definitions of employer. And we did a case that we put in the other day. It relates to a dismissal and an equality claim. There's 2 bits of it. The dismissal goes against somebody that the person has never seen. They've never seen him, because he's an agency worker. It's the end user. And the other part of the claim goes against the agency. So the answer on that is, you need the time just to double check it. Yeah. And, it just takes time. I mean, I put it this way. I put my hand down. This is volume 1 of Clare's Irish Employment Law. There's 2 of them. And they both sit beside my desk. Yeah. Even though I've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, the employment law is kind of a moving, constantly changing legislation. And every few years there seems to be something else is added to it. Do you find that you're always looking at the new legislation and keeping yourself up to date, or is the experience there as well, or is it a mixture of both?
Oh, look, we do a newsletter every month called Keeping in Touch, and that kind of we review all WRC, all Labour Court, all European Court decisions, and the High Court decisions. I think the one that's going out next week is 62 pages long. Now, that's just, somebody said, why do we do it? Yeah. Well, we do it every month, and it makes us read the stuff. Yeah. So
keeps you current.
Yeah, it's current, but what I would say to you is, it is experience. You need the experience. You need to put the time in to actually reading the legislation, and you have to do the research, and you have to keep yourself up to date. But if you're a commercial lawyer or a company lawyer, you've got the act and it moves from there, and it's pretty straight. The stuff that we have it's like a moving target. Yeah. And the law changes. I mean, we had it there a little while back, a High Court decision which effectively said you can get an injunction for dismissing somebody when they're on probation. So we were all gone, oh God, complete change of advice to employers on somebody on probation. Now we've got a Court of Appeal decision that came out and said, no, so long as it's not for misconduct, off you go, you can fire them for anything you like, they're on their probation. Now, that makes sense, but so we've all had to change back again. So you're phoning your commercial client saying, by the way, the thing that I was telling you about having to go through a disciplinary? That's gone. Yeah. So, you have to keep up to date. And by the way, if somebody's interested in employment law, we have the newsletter. But all the big offices, all the firms that do a reasonable amount of employment law, they're all putting out newsletters. And if you're interested, you go and you get them and you read them.
Can I take you back there to, you mentioned your training solicitor there to start. So when was that? What era was that, or what year? And what was your training like, and your experience into Blackhall and qualification into a new young solicitor?
Right. Well, I have the thing that I was going to be apprenticed to a particular office, and then I suddenly found that the Law Society had gone into it, and I was told I couldn't be. I had the great pleasure of being then apprenticed to Lawrence Cullen in what was then Augustus Cullen, and now it's Augustus Cullen Law. And so he got a phone call from what was then Jim Ivers, who was the Director General, and I went down to Wicklow to sign up the apprenticeship papers, and they were apprenticeships then. And he said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Grogan, that's great, I'll see you in 3 years." And I said, "You haven't read the new regulations, have you?" And he was a council member, and he went, "What?" So they phoned Jim Ivers, and it came as a bit of a shock that he was going to actually have to have me in the office, and going to have to pay me. And I think it was £30. Now, he was a bit more generous than that. So I had Lawrence Cullen, and Lawrence Cullen trained me on one simple thing. It was, don't come in and quote a commentary or a case to me. Quote the section and the subsection. That's the training that I got from him. And by the way, I then ended up being in PwC, where I did tax, and where we had the legislation sat on your desk. It didn't even sit behind your desk. It actually sat on your desk all the time in hard copy. And I would say that we've won some top of the range employment cases in this country, and we've been there, and it's all been down to actually section and subsection, and it's going into a case. I mean, we won the first ever point of law in relation to the National Minimum Wage Act. No, we're delighted but I had an excellent senior counsel in the case, and it came down to us sitting down and looking at the legislation. We'd lost in the Labour Court, we won on appeal in the High Court, but that came down to actually section and subsection. And I say to any young solicitor, forget about the commentaries. Yeah, they're very useful, but we'll go back to the legislation. And it's surprising. I tell the story against myself. There was the revenue a number of years ago when I was in PwC. They made an error in drafting a piece of legislation. They made an error. Basically what they did was they had cogged the UK legislation, but there was a definition in it that they hadn't bothered doing the definition for. So there was an issue on it. And I used to deal with the revenue, and I wrote an article for the Irish Tax Review, having gone down and met particular revenue officials. And I said that this is how the section should be interpreted. And the following month in the Irish Tax Review, a person wrote an article saying that I was a complete and utter idiot, that that's not how it has to be interpreted. And the following month, there was a letter from one of the revenue commissioners who wrote to the Irish Tax Review saying that they had read both articles and that my article was correct. Now, I did phone the fellow who wrote the other article, and I said to him, "You're absolutely right. My article is absolutely wrong on the law, but it suits the revenue to interpret it in a particular way because they made a complete mess of the whole thing." Now, so that's a commentary. It's been quoted many times as to how it's been dealt with, and the revenue letter, but it's technically wrong. But it's right.
Yeah.
So what I would say to somebody is, the fact that you see written down in the Gazette or in somewhere doesn't mean that it's right. Go back and read the legislation. Make sure you have the legislation, and the first place to go to is the legislation.
And when did you set up your own firm? Did you have much of a window working in other firms, or did you set up your own firm pretty quickly after qualification?
I was nearly on a Zimmer frame when I set up my own firm, and you know that well. This firm set up on the 5th of January 2009. I was a partner in a firm called PC Moore and Company, a very well-respected, long-standing firm in Dublin. And we had a very amicable parting of the ways. Right? They wanted to go one way, and I wanted to go a different way. And so I set up, and I had the great advantage that my secretary came into me and said that she had heard that I was leaving. And I said, well, yes, that's right. And she said, well, I'm coming with you. And because the employment files are going with you, you're caught under the transfer of undertaking, so you don't have a choice. And she's still with me. So we set up. So I had the great advantage of setting up an office and having 9 cabinets full of files and 2 other cabinets full of hearings. So it was seamless. I wasn't sitting there waiting for the door for people to start knocking on the door. I was already up and running. So, you know, we were in College Green, and then we came to Harbour Place a couple of years back. And I mean, we're a boutique firm. Yeah. If you come in and ask us about buying a house, we'll give you a name of somebody who'll do it for you. Yeah. We only do employment and personal injury, and even our personal injury is primarily workplace injuries. Yeah. We do some car accidents, but really our area is related to workplace, because we're an employment law firm. So that's how we do it, you know. Yeah. We just try and do it right. Do
you have a good mix of advising employees and employers, or do you prefer one over the other? Or?
I suppose I started in 2009, which was in the middle of a recession. You know, if you're thinking of opening up a firm, always open up in the middle of a recession, because you're not going to be spending money, and you kind of get into an idea that I started, and I would have been seen as solely employee, really solely employee. Couple of employers, but mainly 95% was employee work. What we found is over the last number of years, about 3 or 4, we now have more employers coming to us, but we have a funny mix of employer. We have a number of employers that we have put up on crosses who didn't like the experience, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So we got rid. So they've come into us, but they're now. We didn't like the experience in the WRC and the Labour Court. We don't want to be back down there, and we want you to work with us to make sure we're not going to be back down there. The other employers that tend to come to us are those who are saying, yeah, look, we know that you've done all this work for employees, but what we would really like to do is make sure that we haven't been down to the WRC, but we don't want to go through the gates of hell. And we want you to work with us to make sure that we're compliant. So we do a lot of what we call WAM, which is walkabout management. So we say, how does your place work? And we draft there. So we're not the cheapest office for doing it, but you can buy a policy off the shelf. You know, there are people who are selling, there's a handbook and a contract, and you look at it and you go, yeah, it's generic. You know, and sometimes I call it's buying a Trabant. Yeah. You know, it'll move, but, you know, that's about it. If you've ever been in a Trabant car, which I have, if it rains, the windscreen wipers are manual, so you need to have somebody with you because you have to keep. I thought that was brilliant. You know, like you hope it didn't rain too much because you could get a very sore hand very quickly. So, but you know, Trabant, yeah. So I say you don't necessarily need Rolls Royce. Yeah. You don't even need a Bentley, but you know, you might. So you need what's suitable for you. And I say to some people, it's like somebody buying a tractor. Yeah. You can, if you've only got 70 acres, you know, you don't need the biggest and best tractor in the country. You need one that's going to deal with it. Yeah. If you happen to have 500 acres and it's all going to be arable, then yes, you absolutely need the top of the range one. So it depends what you need, and then you draft it for that organization. Then it works. So instead of sticking square pegs into round holes, you try and put a round peg into a round hole. Costs a bit more, but in the long term, it's actually an awful lot cheaper. I mean, I'll put it this way. Going down to run a case in the WRC, if you're an employer, even without using a counsel, you're talking 6,000 to 7,000 by the time you know. Now, if you can avoid that for 3,000 or 4,000, it seems to me to be an awful lot better, because going to the WRC, it's not only the lawyer's fees that you have. You've got all the prep time. You're pulling people out for meetings. You're bringing people down to hearings. That's a cost as well. So when you put all that cost together, it could be costing you 15,000 disruption, and then you've got the reputational risk. So, you know, and what happens if you get appealed to the Labour Court? You know, so much better to try and cut it off at the pass and get the thing done right. I'm killing my own staff there because I spend a lot of time in the WRC. You know, somebody said once that they should give me a bed down there. I said, well, only if I got a kitchen as well and a sitting room with a TV, you know.
What have you seen in the last 12 months since COVID? Has the whole employment law landscape changed? Like, what's it like on the ground? Are people, like, with, you know, the government schemes and people laid off in hospitality industry, and employees is probably especially more fearful of the rights, and what's happening out there on the ground?
Well, the big one that's happening is discrimination against women. I have never seen so many cases.
In what way?
Now,
what do you mean?
I may be strange. Maybe it's just my office. I doubt it. But I've never had as many claims for women under the Maternity Protection Act not being allowed to go back to their job after work. Pregnancy-related dismissal, well, it's skyrocketed.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, and there's a case on that, and we put up a post actually on LinkedIn about that today. That's a big one. Huge issues with stress. Now, the stress, funnily, there's a change on the stress. We're now getting what I call upward bullying, i.e. it's the employees who are bullying the manager or the senior executive. And we're seeing a lot more stress coming in, equally from general employees. That's fine, that's there. But we're seeing a lot more coming from senior executives who are really being put under stress. Now, you do personal injury work, so you know, occupational stress you can't sue for. Workplace stress you can. The difficulty, but you have to be shown that you've suffered a recognised psychiatric or physical injury because of it.
Continuous.
But there are other areas that you can go under employment law as well, down to WRC. But for senior executives, it's quite frightening what's happening, because they are getting really hammered, and I think that's going to be the mental health issues. I think are going to be absolutely huge coming forward. Redundancy is a massive issue. I mean, at the start of this, I think I was interviewed by on RTE on what was the Sean O'Rourke show, but and I said I thought there could be 100,000 people made redundant, and there was kind of a suck in a breath. At this stage, I think it's going to be that's a very conservative figure. Wow. I think it's going to be a lot more than that. I think there's an awful lot of concern in business. A lot of people have warehoused their tax and their VAT. I think a lot of people have dipped into that to keep businesses open. So I think when businesses do open, there's going to be a lot of liquidations. There's going to be a lot of business closures. I don't know about you, but I don't see the coffee shops in Cork City or in Dublin City or Limerick having the numbers to keep going. So I'm wondering how many of these have been actually paying their rent, how many of them will be able to continue to pay their rent. So I think there will be a tsunami of redundancies, but I think there's going to be a tsunami of liquidations. And maybe I was in the wrong area of law. Maybe I should be doing liquidations.
But do you think that there will be an escalation of all those issues once the kind of government subsidies start to end?
Oh, look, the layoff with the pub, you know, there's 500,000 on that. That's just stopping redundancy claims going through at the moment. There's 500,000 on that. That means there's 500,000 people who can't work remotely. So when businesses open up, you know, with the restrictions that the HSA have put in place, how are they all going to come back into the workplace? Yeah, they're not. When the EWSS goes, wow, they have to pay them their full salaries. I just don't see that happening. I think you're going to have a combination of redundancies and salary reductions, and people will be told, you know, you're on a 20-25% salary reduction if you don't like it. It's the redundancy, because I don't think businesses will be able to deal with it. I mean, to get the EWSS, you have to be down 30%. Yeah. That's not sustainable for most businesses, not long term. So
can I just take you back to at the start? You said there's an increase in claims related to discrimination against women. What type? How is that the case in 2021? I thought there was, the workplace mentalities and environments had come a long way. Is it that women have gone on maternity leave and then issues with COVID have happened and now people are making them redundant, or what type of issues are you experiencing or claims?
Well, I suppose I could be flippant and say that one of the things that I'm seeing is I'm seeing an awful lot more equality in who's doing the dismissal. So the dismissals are actually being done roughly about 50-50 actually by women.
Okay.
Discriminate to getting rid of women. So that's a bad side of equality that we don't want to see, but it's there. Look, this thing of firing pregnant women as a complete no-no and an egregious breach of employment law, this has been around for yonks. I mean, this goes back to 1998. At this stage, 13 years, everybody knows you can't do it, but it's been done wholesale. It's just you get somebody who goes, oh well, I'm afraid to take a case because of how it will affect my reputation.
Okay.
Rubbish. The only person whose reputation is going to be affected is the employers. Nobody looks in these. If you see the cases that are reported, you don't see a report in the Irish Times or the Independent or the Examiner that says Mary O'Reilly brings a claim for pregnancy-related dismissal. What you see is Murphy and Co. hammered by WRC. So they hardly even remember the name of the woman in the case. Nobody remembers the case. They're not going to put up her picture if they're outside the WRC. The last one that we had that was there, the report was in the paper with a massive big picture of the employer's premises, which happened to be a pub. A very nice picture of the place, with a heading, pregnancy-related dismissal at endemic levels, says employment law solicitor. I don't know where they've even found my client's name in the report. So there is no downside to bringing those claims, but there is a hidden underbelly of it. And a lot of the claims then get settled. So then it's seen that it isn't a problem.
Okay.
It really is.
How long have you been on I know you said on the Law Society Council. Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy helping colleagues and being part of that?
Well, I enjoy helping colleagues. I mean, that's great fun.
Yeah.
Problem on it is, you can't always solve the problems.
Yeah.
So, but I do enjoy the interaction with colleagues. It's great. I kind of take it that I've always been known as somebody that you can pick up the phone and say, "Hi, Richard, I've got an employment law problem. Can you help me?" So this is now I get things about conveyancing, and I go, "All right, it's been a long time since I did a conveyance, but all right, I can go and check it out for you."
Yeah.
So look, that's giving something back, and I've always been a great believer that you give something back to the profession, and if I can help colleagues, I'm only delighted. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It takes up a bit of time, but it's, I came to the council late, so I'm never going to be president, not unless they definitely are going to have 90-year-olds there. You have to be there a long time till you become president. So, I mean, if I was, I'd probably have dementia by the time that I became president. But then maybe that would be that mightn't be too bad, because at least he wouldn't. They say, well, he can't. He's on a Zimmer frame and he's got dementia, so there's nothing he can't do anything wrong. But I suppose I'm not known for not speaking out, so they'd probably turn around and say, at the age that he is, he'd turn around and be absolutely appalling with the things that he turns around and he'd say, well, sue me. By the time you get me to court, I'll be dead.
Yeah, well, I know, a couple of months ago, you picked up the phone to me as a colleague with some advice, and I was very, very appreciative of it. One of my social media posts probably had a bit of phraseology in it. It was incorrect. And I was sincerely grateful for you for doing that to me, because at the end of the day, it's good to have good colleagues, and it's good to be a good colleague.
Look, I get fed up to the back teeth of people who take the view that you don't help out people. When I started, you could always pick up the phone to a colleague.
Yeah. And
when I started, I'll be honest with you, we didn't have email. And somebody put a precedent in an envelope and sent it to you with the names Tipp-X'd out. And if you don't give back and you don't help colleagues, then in my view, you shouldn't be in a profession. The idea of a profession is you help out a colleague, and if a colleague has a problem, you help them out. And if they pick up the phone and they ask you for their help, you give the help. Now, my experience has been I've gotten a lot of help from an awful lot of colleagues over my lifetime. And I still get help from colleagues, and colleagues still phone me. And of course, I'll always pick up the phone. If there's something that I see and somebody needs a helping hand, you pick up the phone, you turn around and say, "This is." You might be told to get lost for yourself. The one that you had, no, you didn't. But that's just being helpful. And you do personal injury work, we do personal injury work. Are we in competition? Possibly. But in reality, we're doing the same area. We're doing the same area, and we should work together. It's not one that we should be turning around and trying to get one up on somebody, because when you try and do that, all that happens is you get a kick. You get kicked, and if you've been one who's helped people, you'll be surprised somebody else will help you up the ground.
100%. So, Richard, thank you so much for your time. I just one last. What's the plans for the future for yourself in the short term and long term, professionally and personally?
Oh, look, there used to be a joke here in the office. They still say the joke that they'd be rolling me down to the Labour Court when I'm 85. I think much to the annoyance of the Labour Court, oh, here he comes again, and he's 85 and he's got a stick. What are we going to do? And he claims he suffered from dementia. So we're in real problem. Look, I have always said this to people. If you get a job that you love, you're never going to work a day in your life. And the question is, when it gets to Sunday, are you looking forward to Monday? If you're looking forward to Monday, I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, to be honest with you, do I have a long-term plan? No, I don't. The answer on it is, if somebody phoned me today and said, "Do you want to do a merger?" I'll talk to them. If somebody said they wanted to buy my practice, I'd talk to them. And I've never been one to turn around and say, "This is where I'm going. Where do I want to be in 5 years?" Look, if you took January 2020 and you were doing your budgets and where you're going to be in a year's time, well. So I haven't got a clue. I don't, if I knew that, I'd go down to if I could see into the future, I'd go down to the bookies office. I'd have the biggest accumulator that ever ran, and then I would be retired out to Portugal, owning all the bookie shops in the world. So I think my plan is to keep going as long as I can, and my plan is hopefully to train up as many people as I can in employment law and assist them, and and then after that. Right, at some stage this place is, I'm not going to last forever, so at some stage you either have to sell up or I amalgamate, and I merge, in which case I'm being bought out, fine. But I'd actually like to be still hanging around at doing what I do. I'm kind of technically quite good, so until I get the Alzheimer's, I think and dementia, I think I'll just try plodding along and to do the best I can. And I want to thank you for inviting me on, and for those who are going to listen to it, because I talk an awful lot of BS at times, and I'm sure they'll turn around and say, "Oh God, it's the worst show ever."
It's been it's been an absolute pleasure. One last one is any young solicitors out there, a young trainee or someone thinking of getting into law, what advice would you give them? Would you recommend it?
Actually, I would. It's a great challenge. What I would say to you is, if you're going to come into law, do it. But come in and work on the basis of get trained by the best. Follow the best around. If they turn around, they should be bumping into you, and you should be sucking out every piece of information you can from the people who are more senior, who've been there, done that, and have the T-shirt. And be a section and subsection person. Challenge everything, look at everything, be the person who comes in with the legislation in your hand saying, "I wonder, is this right?" Don't just work on the basis of the precedent of the system and you're going to copy and paste it, because that's not being a lawyer. If you want to do employment law or one of those areas, that's a different thing. If you want to be commercial, that's fine. I think there's so many areas of law, and what I would say to you is, I think you're going to see a lot of people do law, and then go into private practice or go into business as in-house counsel, or actually go into business on the business side of it, because law is a very good degree and a very good way of thinking, because you have to be logical and you have to look down the road. If I was taking somebody to come into law, what I would say to you is do something different. And by that I mean I have a son who's gone off doing the AITI exam. So I am AITI as well, but that's law and tax. That's a good one. But do extras on. So if there's something you're interested in, if it's GDPR, data protection, if it's accountancy, have something that's a bolt-on, because once you've got that bolt-on, that gives you so much flexibility. Really, I mean, my career, I've been employment law, but I was also in tax. Then I was tax and employment law. Now I'm employment law with a bit of tax. But it gives you a huge range of things to do. So once you've got the bolt-on, it opens up an awful lot of doors. That would be my advice. And yeah, come in, enjoy it. And by the way, don't work 24/7. You know, I do, but that's by choice. I can do, but that's only because I really love it.
Do what I say, do what I do.
So I would look, get in. It's a good profession.
Yeah.
You know, if you're good at numbers, become an accountant. If you're really good at numbers, become an actuary. We used to say when we were at PwC that actuaries were people that found accountancy too exciting. But you know, do something that you love, and never pick the role in law on the basis of what the paycheck is going to be. Then you're never going to like the job. You're just doing it for the money. If you do it for an area that you love, short term you mightn't make as much, but long term you're going to have a much better life, a much longer time in the profession, and you're probably going to do an awful lot better by doing something that you absolutely love. I could have stayed doing conveyancing, because that's what I did at one stage, but I liked employment law and I liked tax, and I went off and I learned it, and I had my own business. Don't think I'd have that if I stayed doing conveyancing. So that's my advice. Do what you want, do what you like.
Richard, thank you so much.
I want to thank you for inviting me on, and you know, I like your podcast. They're absolutely great.
Thank you.
And normally when you do these things, it's all about law, but actually this is about life.
Yeah, well, that's it. Show the real person. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And look, the very best of luck with the future.
Thanks.